Gender-based violence, it has led to a lot of discussions in the past, in the recent past, based on a lot of experiences that people have had within over the years. In Africa, this has become a problem. It has become more of a bigger problem in South Africa. And we have decided and have come together as African youths to discuss and engage on this topic. What is leading to this? What exactly is happening? Where are we coming from and where are we going? Why do we have such things still happening in 2020? Whilst we are busy, trying to deal with the after effects of the pandemic, we have seen in the recent past, in the past week, horrible news. I was watching a video last night of something that happened in Midrand. It's just that bad. We are joined today with a panel of great young Africans in different parts of the world to engage, to help us in dissecting this topic, to help us in sharing their experiences, how they've, witnessed this. So we have Herbert joining us from Trieste. Herbert has been a regular as one of us on Baobab Chats. We have Sabina joining us as well from Trieste, Italy. We have Sam all the way from Kapstadt. And we have Tiani and Tabi joining us from Johannesburg. Nice to meet you guys. So just for us to commence this conversation, great. And then Amanda's connection came back as well.
Hi.
Amanda is joining us from Johannesburg.
Hello.
So to start this conversation, maybe let's start with you, Sam. What exactly how have you experienced this? Do you feel safe? And from community, I know you as an activist and being involved in a lot of things. How have you understood the extent of this problem, of this scourge?
Well, hi everyone, and thank you so much for the platform. I think that first of all, it's always important to acknowledge your positionality in society. So obviously, I speak um, from the position of, a young white woman living in South Africa. That by no means I am a spokesperson on behalf of all white women, but it just means that I acknowledge my privilege. And I think that's important when even discussing a question like gender-based violence, because I think it is harder for women of color to exist in what remains a very untransformed and violent society. But I think if I was just to answer as a young woman, I would say that no, I don't think it is possible to wake up and walk and occupy any space and feel completely safe. Um, What informs it, I think, is quite a broad question. But I think as a starter, I would say you can't really discuss gender based violence without looking at the socio-economic disparities that exist in South Africa and that have a history, and inform the current context of, the lived experiences of most South Africans, in particular people of color. But I don't want to speak on behalf of people of color. I think that would be wrong of me to do, but I think just in my personal observations, it is part of this broad question. But no, are we safe? I mean, definitely not. I wouldn't think so.
Interesting. So, Sabina, is this your experiences or your perspective, in terms of feeling safe?
I mean, for me as well, I think I will acknowledge that I also come from a place of privilege. Um, I am, I mean, I'm mixed race, but predominantly coming from middle class environment. But personally speaking, I too do not feel safe. Um, quite often I find it's difficult to move around. Public transport as well poses a big issue. Um, and so I agree with what Sam said. Um, what informs it? Again, we have an issue with long-standing gender roles that need to be changed. But also, I wonder if we also need to be interested in, despite our progressive laws, what kind of enforcement we have and how these have been improving. I think we're bombarded a lot by statistics about what's happening, but not so much how law enforcement is being given access to vulnerable communities.
That's I would be interested maybe when we come back to you to actually get a feeling of when I hear you saying you also don't feel safe. Is it not being safe as a female, or as a South African, or as a person who's in Italy? But we'll come to that later. Like, your
Okay.
this sense of safety for you. What kind of, where it comes from, and this challenge. But yeah, we can hear from Tiani and Tapi. Yeah, you can go
Um,
ahead.
yes. So yeah, safety is something that I would say it's not a real thing here in South Africa. Not even on a like a because I'm a female, but because we have such high crime rates in general. So at the bottom of that, like, law enforcement, when they're trying to uh, you know take measures to make the country safer, the last people who are even being considered most of the time is women and children anyway. So it's very unsafe. I mean, it's so embedded in our minds that there's certain things that we have to do. We have to act in a certain way to be safe, because safety is just not guaranteed. It's not just something we can assume. And this is across the board at any point in time. And I can say that for as long as I was, like a teenager, I've been aware of this. Specifically, I have to take care of myself. Have to take measures to protect myself and to feel safe at all times. I've just never not felt this in just so many years.
Yeah, I think I agree, but it doesn't even begin with stepping out. Just inside as well, as a Black woman, you have to second guess every single thing that you decide to do. If you even have a safe space, like once you leave that safe space, your next thought is like, am I doing the right thing? Is this safe enough for me to do? Am I allowed to be myself, lest someone else should disagree and, perpetuate their lack of security, I suppose, on me. And, it's never been safe. And it's kind of ironic how one would say that it's only happening now and it's more prevalent now, but that's not the case. It always has been. It always has been at this level. It's just that what we have now is, and not all of us have this, but access to seeing women not being safe, not being in safe spaces everywhere. It's just always been a thing. It's never not. It's always been prevalent. It's always been number one. It's just that now we see it. And now we have platforms to talk about it. And like, we're still thinking after this platform, are we safe enough to leave, to go out, or else like, are people going to be like, oh, she's the one who, that's just how deep it is. That's how embedded it is. It may seem like a joke, but it's dead serious.
Yeah, and from what you're saying there, we'll come on to this one. We'll come to you, Herbert, where Shelton commented to say, we needed a balanced panel. We can't just have a panel with females and without males. And a lot of people have raised that. Herbert, you are here. Do you feel safe? Let's start with this same question, because do you feel safe or not? And what you know, do you know women being safe, from your experience?
Well, for me, I mean, if you are in South Africa, there are places that you know that at this particular time you don't have to go. Even if you're there as well, you don't even yourself, you have just to keep an eye on what's going on. And now it's actually the point where you least expect these things actually is exactly the time that you have this kind of encounter. But I think me as a man, not feeling safe, I think it will be double or triple the time of you being a woman not being safe wherever they go because of the. I mean, we have seen quite a lot of horrific events, be it on social media and everything that has been happening right now. That myself, I try to imagine just by looking. I can't finish the video, but these things have been happening. I mean, it's really one of those things. You know how people are even afraid of getting out because of the statistics of COVID. What more of people just see a video and actually says it happened in Midrand and you literally stay there? It's a little bit of this is not really one of the things that I would want to be staying in, I guess.
And on that point as well, it brings also that fact of at what point do we distinguish between whether a certain violence is gender based or is just a societal violence? Because that might speak to what Tabi and Tian were talking about, right? In terms of saying this has always been there. Like, is it in the sense of gender based violence or in the sense of violence in general? Yeah, Tabi.
Yep.
With gender-based violence, it has a certain type of power. So what dominates that type of violence is I have more power over you because of the societal conditions that have been built for years upon years. Patriarchy, for instance, because I'm a man and you dare speak to me as an equal, I will show you how I can beat you, and literally how I can beat you. And so I guess that's what's different. And societal is very vague. So, and if we say societal violence, that would probably be us talking about groups, more than one instance, more than one particular thing between a relationship of two people.
Wow. And let's come to you, Amanda. You know, do you feel safe? You know, unfortunately, someone is trying to sabotage you. I don't know if you feel safe because you know
I
you
mean,
keep on being kicked out of
someone
the
doesn't want
It's
conversation.
me
probably
to
a
say
man.
what I need to say.
It's
It's
probably a
probably a
man.
man. You're
Come
right.
on, guys, really?
A
And
man doesn't
Sam,
want me
Sam,
to say it.
because you uttered that, I'm going to show you something that popped up on Facebook to you. Yeah, go ahead, Amanda.
Okay, so I think feeling safe is for a woman unheard of, just from you being a woman. So if I'm going out, I think about what I'm gonna wear. First of all, I don't think that's a man problem. I think you two can relate that if you're going for dinner, if you're going to a night out with friends, you don't have to second guess,
But is
okay,
it is that
where does
determined by what you are doing or Safiti? Or, I mean, I tend to like
no,
when you're
like
going for
I
dinner, it's
genuinely
more. Hmm?
no, as in genuinely, if I leave the house,
Yeah.
I have to second guess myself. So if I want to wear, I don't know, some heels and even like if I feel I'm dressed modestly, I have to second guess. Okay, if a man sees me, am I going to feel safe? Is he going to walk towards me and think that I'm dressed this way so that he can talk to me anyhow, so that he can
Okay.
approach me and my friends anyhow?
Okay.
Just being in Joburg alone, I can't tell you how many nights I've been out with my girlfriends and we literally feel at some point like we're in danger. As a woman, you can't go to the bathroom alone. That's how bad it is. So, as women, girls' night, it's literally a matter of you literally walk as a herd, as a group
Yep.
to
And I
secure
saw
someone.
Tiani, your hand was up. When you
You know
want to
what?
jump in,
So for me, it's
be comfortable
ridiculous.
to just jump in.
I will do. I was just actually agreeing with what Amanda's saying. It's true. It's like from the minute you think about getting out of your house, you already feel uh, like you already start questioning so many things. You know, the person that I'm going to be with, do they have a car? You know, like for safety reasons. You think for safety reasons, like, am I protected enough? But the other point I wanted to add is that while our communities in South Africa are not safe, but also people's homes as well are not safe. People are not safe in their own homes as well. Um, the way we get treated by men is not just out there. It's also largely within the homes. And I'm trying to speak for a lot of South African people because of, you know, the way the president says that this issue is it's like a pandemic in South Africa. Gender-based violence is the second pandemic. We have coronavirus and we have gender-based violence. You know, this thing is it's women need to feel no, I'm saying women don't feel safe in any context, at home or outside of their home.
Yeah, that's sad, and that complicates the situation, right? And it complicates the discussion so much, so much. I wanted to say to you, Sam, but I think this is a philosophical discussion for another day. Shonaka saying on Facebook that it's black women, not women of color. You know, he's categorizing it differently to say it's not affecting, you know, the same people the same way. But that's not the discussion of the day. It's a good food for thought that we can engage on another day. And you spoke about the issue of in the home we don't feel safe. Paul on Facebook says religion plays a role in this. And I'm thinking this kind of now ties and agrees to that fact. But I wanted to come back to you, Sabina. You're feeling unsafe. You are in Italy right now. Let's do a comparison. Is it the same? And when you're in
I
South Africa?
mean, I this is I guess this is interesting. I mean, of course, you have to bear in mind that where I am in Italy is a tiny town. It also a first world country that is not facing some of the socio-economic problems that we have in South Africa. For sure, I feel safer here. I'll just be honest and say that. I definitely feel safer. That I still, as a female, I still don't always feel safe. And a lot of people tell me, what are you worrying about? It's so safe here. But if a man walks behind me, I still question what's going to happen. Is this man misreading something? Is he going to do something? So I won't say I feel entirely safe, but I feel a lot safer than back home.
Yeah, yeah.
Unfortunately.
And maybe we can also hear from, I know Sam, you've done a lot of traveling as well when you've been in different parts of the world and everyone else, because it's good to do to make these comparisons so that as much as it helps in diagnosing the problem. Is this a societal, is it a community issue? How have you witnessed it when you guys have traveled in different countries? Yeah, Sam and everyone else.
Well, I mean, not to have, as you say, an ideological discussion, but I think for me, I struggle with the framing of that question simply because I wouldn't want to, reinforce this narrative that Africa is a violent and dangerous place, and other places in the world are not. I think that
But I think political correctness also affects us. I'm not saying this as directly to you, but we were having that debate as well on Facebook with Plumelo and them saying you can't just say you call it a crime against humanity. It's part of that, in terms of. But you can go ahead, Sam. It's yeah.
Well, I mean, I think if you look at a country like Rwanda, where legislation is quite clear on the repercussions of gender-based violence, and the legislation is not just there. In other words, it doesn't just exist in theory, but it is actually enforced. So the criminal justice system works for women, works for vulnerable people. And I also just wanted to say we need to just be conscious because my black brother there earlier on in the comment section, as you say, wanted to take that ideological turn. If we want to go there, it's not woman with an E. Ne? We must not look at things through a binary lens. But nonetheless, if you look at a country like that, I think what helps is that we have a criminal justice system that is enforcing this legislation and that sends a very clear message to say that, law or legislation and law enforcement is on the side of the survivor or victim. Some would say victim, some would say survivor. Whereas I think here in SA, we don't, or I personally don't have that reassurance. I don't have that sense of if I go and report, and I'm speaking as a survivor, by the way, if I go and report and take this forward, I have a sense of reassurance that the officer who is taking down the report won't question me. That there is a rape test kit available in the station, that there is counseling resources, that when I go to the stand during a trial, I won't have to relive what was a very traumatic and violent experience, and potentially not even see the perpetrator who is sitting right across from me actually convicted and sentenced. I don't think we have that sense, or at least I don't. And yes, we had our president come out and condemn it and say, we will make sure the criminal justice system works for you. But the question is how, because we haven't been seeing that.
I also want to I mean, I agree with you guys. I have a question from a male's perspective. And I mean, it also has to go to the authorities with respect to this whole gender-based violence, of course. I mean, the point is that imagine my wife beats me and I'm going to the police and report this issue. Hey, constable, yeah, my wife beat me. Like, your wife beat you? Really? Like, how serious is my case going to be taken?
So
I mean, this is a totally different conversation.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I hear you. I hear what you're saying, Herbert. But
I'm just saying, like, if you are me and then I go to the authorities and
no, I hear what you're saying. I 100% hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, if I would go to the authorities and tell them that I've been sexually abused, the authorities are gonna start blaming me. Why were you abused? What were you wearing? And I understand, do not get me wrong, there is toxic masculinity that exists that I fight for. But what we're talking about now is if a victim, as a woman, a Black woman, or another woman, goes to the police after being violated, and it's gender-based, and the majority of people that are affected by gender-based violence are women. If they go to the so-called authorities who are supposed to keep them safe, the first thing that they're gonna do is blame them. And that's what's called secondary victimization. That is all that happened. So while we're trying to have this conversation, let's be aware of ourselves.
Yes,
and what we're saying.
I'm totally with you. I'm totally with you.
We are aware.
Okay.
We are
aware of we are aware of this situation. Okay. I'm just trying to say, let's say I am your brother. My wife beat me. and then I go with you to the policeman, to the police station, and
Okay.
I actually say, my
All
wife
right.
beat me.
Herbert,
I know this situation
So
has been
Herbert,
yes,
I'm
yes,
sorry. I
yes,
I have to interject
yes,
because I literally had this conversation, I kid you not, yesterday with my
yes,
friend, and she's a female, right?
yeah,
So we had a discussion about gender-based violence. Then she said, but men are also abused. Then I asked her, okay, so we're discussing gender-based, right? Purely because I'm
yes,
a female. That is what
yeah,
we're discussing. I'm abused because I'm a woman. I'm abused
yeah,
because people look down on me. That's what we're discussing. I said to her, think about why men only then want to bring this issue up. I said, I will never look down on any abuse victim. It doesn't matter if
yeah,
you're a man or a woman. Right
yes,
now, the issue is
Yes,
women because
yes,
right now, if
yes.
you look at the
Yeah,
statistics, just
no,
the
no,
statistics alone,
absolutely.
yes,
it's
yes,
so
All lives matter
disproportionate
here.
no,
to
no, no,
of course when
I
it's
100%.
no,
Black
no, no,
Lives
no,
so
Matter,
let's
all lives
let's
matter.
let's
Let's
no, no,
not
no.
take away from the issue
so
by
I'm not
just
saying,
addressing
guys,
the question now.
no,
okay,
no,
so
guys,
let's
Violence
we are,
let's
exists.
let's do it this way, because this is where the conversation starts. This is where we begin to understand and coming up with how do we move forward. And I think, Herbert, your question is heard. Let's allow the ladies
yes,
to give their response
Mm-hmm.
to the question and their understanding of it. And we obviously we continue the conversation. But I want to come to you. You've been sitting in the terraces listening to this, Sabina, and Tiani. What's your view on this context? Because at times when you are listening and watching from the sideline, it's not when your emotions getting invested, and your view you want it to emerge. What's your understanding?
I mean, based on Herbert's question,
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like, sorry, Herbert, maybe not the right time and space to bring this up. I mean, often oppressors want to all of a sudden bring up like crimes that were conducted against them, which
no,
kind
no,
of detracts from the main story of what's actually happening. You know, here are some examples
Herbert,
where
hold
the
it.
people who are oppressing were oppressed. We know that these crimes do happen. They will be taken seriously, but this is not the conversation because
I
females are the
understand that.
ones who have been oppressed.
Yeah.
I mean, this is my opinion.
Yes, Tiani.
Sorry.
Yeah, Tiani. Yeah.
That's Sabina. Facts, girl. I'm
I
with you.
totally agree with you, Sabina. The trying to bring about other ways in which people might feel violated or unjust or like have experienced injustice, it's going to take away from what we are trying to discuss now. And
Exactly.
I think that you also need to remember that if we are highlighting this as an issue, it isn't an opportunity for other issues to be highlighted. Because um, this actually makes women feel like they can't talk about their problems, because as soon as a
Whoa,
woman starts talking about her problems,
So what about
then
me?
another person brings
What
up their
about
problem.
me?
but I thought it's a
What
gender-based
about me?
violence. It's not violent against women. But okay, I get this part. No, no, I totally get this part. Guys, I totally agree with you. The reason why I brought up my question is this, it to a certain extent, also feel like we're saying gender-based violence. I agree that this actually has quite a very high impact on female, and I really share your sentiments and everything. But I also feel that at a certain extent, if it is going to be equal with respect of irrespective of anything, as far as I know in South Africa, from a male's perspective, if someone calls the police and say so and so raped me, I know that this is what I know and this is what I've heard and I've seen. You only explain your story behind the cell, especially if they actually catch
Yeah.
you. Especially from a male's perspective, you can only find a lawyer and what behind the cell. Either you help the person or not. This actually happens. This is what I know. I know you don't feel safe, but these things do happen.
Yeah. Okay.
But
So
how do
let's
yes?
let's let's wrap this point up. We'll come to you, Tabi and Amanda. Then we move on to the next point. As we continue. Yeah. Go ahead.
Me.
Yes.
So I'm just gonna say this once. hopefully. I'm sure we are all not saying that violence against men and rape and so on does not exist. It does. But right now we're talking about the majority. And if we want to have a platform where we speak about specifically men being abused, men being raped, toxic masculinity, I'm 100% for it. But let's not use it as an excuse to shut women up about their own
Also, I
disparities.
think, sorry to interrupt you, but gender-based violence in this specific case is violence against women and children. So we actually, that's why if Tabi's saying that if we need a platform for other kinds of violences against other genders, we would have called that something else. We need to coin that as something else. Gender-based violence is specifically coined for violences against women and children. That's why we don't even want to answer you, Herbert. Because
yeah, Amanda.
My apologies.
Amanda?
My apologies.
Yes, Amanda.
Okay. So like I said, I'm extra emotional because I spoke about this, like I'm saying literally yesterday, to another woman. So to say women are abused is not to say men are not abused. What is important is to realize when can you conduct that conversation constructively? When can you engage people and other men? We are talking about women because it's so disproportionate to an extent that this has to be its own conversation, right? So let's accept that what is happening to women, we can't even say it's a war against women, because a war, at least each party or each side has an equal chance. This is a genocide. If you look in your family, if you look at your friends, at least, if one is like being very generous, at least 10, I kid you not, 10 women who've come to you distressed, telling you about something. So imagine a woman is coming to you and saying, this has happened to me. And then you then say, but you know what, men are also abused. I could go to the police station, no one will listen to me. What exactly have you done, Herbert? So I'm saying, learn from this. To say us saying women are abused is not us saying men are not abused. Us bring platform is us saying the abuse against women is gotten to a point of crisis. So it's now a crisis where we must allow men and women to engage to say what is going to happen, how are we going to fix this without bringing up something else. So usually what happens to victims, especially victims that are women, you say you're abused, the first question people will ask you is, why are you with the men who'd abuse you? Why would you go to a party when you know that there are people there who'd put their hands on you? Why are you bringing this up if they're also men being abused? You never discuss men being abused. So you need to understand
Amanda,
when
Amanda, I want you when because the next point that we want to go into. Firstly, Tabi and Tiani, can you please mute your mic because it's giving feedback and echo. So I'll ask you. You only unmute it when you are going to speak. Now, I wanted to come to the point of saying, Amanda, as you finish off that point, the question, because this has been mentioned a lot, that people suffer in silence. But we want to really engage this point. Do people suffer in silence? Or do people speak, but it's not taken seriously? Or do people speak, but speak to the wrong people? Like if a child is raped or has been abused, do they not tell the family, then the family keeps quiet? Or do they, do they report and then the case is not taken up? Do people suffer in silence? From what you have seen in society, we can start with you, Amanda, as you wrap up your point. Then we go to Sam and the others. You can just jump in when you want to jump in. You can start Tiani after Amanda. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so basically what I'm rounding up, everything you've said, Stanford. It's sad for me to say this, but all of the above. So you find yourself in a situation where, one, for you to even say what happened to you, you are ashamed to say you were violated. You're ashamed to say something happened to you. So let's start there. Then you confide in someone. So what happens, I don't know if it's a societal problem, it probably is. If you go to an aunt, if you go to a colleague who's older and you confide in them, I know of many stories where people have told me that they went to their mother, even your own mother, and then they tell you, well, why did you put yourself in that position? So that is you being blamed for someone doing something to you, right? So you confide in people who should protect you or who should trust that you're coming to them because you want them to help you. then you're not helped. You go to the justice system, you go to the police station. Already there are so many faults with the justice system in terms of how rape is handled. I went to an institution from my university where people were literally like raped by their own boyfriends. And the first question people would ask them is, how can your boyfriend rape you? That should not be the question, but that would literally be what people would make it about. And now in the society with social media, there are many ways for people to say what happened to them and many ways for people to seek help. But still, the victim is always blamed. So I think it's so deep rooted. It's an issue of society, one, and things that have progressively been deemed acceptable. So when someone responds to a woman like, well, why were you dressed like that? It's because literally growing up, you've been told, protect yourself. Men haven't been told, don't rape women. We have been told, don't wear that, don't go there, don't do that. So I need to now walk around protecting myself. And then still, if I'm raped, then I'm blamed because I didn't protect myself enough. So all the things you've said, we're not heard enough, we're not taken seriously, and nothing is really being done to engage that. What is the core root of that? And I speak for myself when I say I think it's society, the way in which women are told that we are the ones, we're the only ones who can solve this issue. So it's an us problem. We are the ones who are raped, we're the ones who are killed, but it's an us problem. So I need to dress appropriately. I need to hang around the right type of men. I need to make the right decision. It's my fault that I'm raped. It's my fault that I'm victimized. It's my fault that my husband abused me. So it never made sense to me. It still doesn't make sense to me. It's still happening. So we need, that's what I'm saying, we need to address. What is the cause of that?
What the cause of that is.
Effective.
Yeah. Yeah, Tavi, sorry.
The mic.
You need to unmute.
Sorry. So I agree with everything that Amanda has said in terms of it being taboo. The subject of abuse is just taboo. And like, especially with culture, in the Black culture, it's kind of one of those things that you don't speak about, that you should rather just keep to yourself and like work it out within your group of families. And then once you overcome that sense of taboo, and you're like, I'm in danger, and you decide to go to authorities, like I've mentioned, how there's secondary victimization, where if you go to the police, they will ask you, well, what did you expect wearing that? Or how do you know you were raped if you were drinking alcohol? Or you go to a hospital and you're asked the same things. A girl like you shouldn't be like doing whatever, or why would you hang out with someone like that anyway? And then again, on a larger scale, there's the whole conditioning, there's social conditioning about this is the standardized way a woman should be, a proper way. And while there is progress, we can't deny that it takes a lot for you to overcome or to get to a point where you're honest with yourself enough to be like, I'm going to do whatever I want, and I know that it's not my fault. And I need for people to take accountability. And so, I think you wanted to add to that, Tim.
Yeah, I mean, authorities, normally when a woman is in a situation where she has been violated, her first instinct is not to go to the authorities. And this must be because of conditionality. I mean, society is taught, like you've seen, I mean, our president in South Africa, our previous president, former President Jacob Zuma, in 2006 was accused of raping a woman, and nothing happened to that case. We were crazy. We all went crazy. Women went crazy, but nothing happened. So what did that teach us? Your own president is an alleged rapist, okay, and the woman was being sidelined. We never heard her voice ever, and I think that that's why that when women get victimized, the first people that they go to close friends or family. And that, so we can't even talk about, do you feel safe with authorities? Because you are not even safe with your mom, like your family. I don't want to say mom, but like your own family. And this is because I want to add to your point, because this is because it's almost like violence against women is like embedded in our culture. And I don't like to say this because it's almost like it's solidifying it, or like I'm proud of it or somehow, but it's the truth. It's the very sad truth that women being violated is just something. It's like it's something that even women get praised for in a way. I want to say
there's like a literal romanticization of the struggle of the Black woman. You're not a Black woman unless you've gone through trials and errors, and especially if they're related to a man.
Yeah, like, oh, your marriage is tough, your man hits you. That's marriage. Oh, we all been through it. That's that. What did you expect? An easy marriage?
Yeah, Sam and Sabina. And then, Sam and Sabina, when you speak about this, whether people suffer in silence and you feel that authorities protect, also let's start to engage also on this question of what's the role of men. What role should men have in the fight against this, in dealing with this? We understand the role of this discussion where Herbert was trying to come from. And, there was that feedback of saying, oh, it's okay, Herbert, but that's not the discussion of the day. The discussion of the day is mainly on children and women. So what then should the men's role be in the process of starting to fight against this? Yeah. Sam?
Well, I mean, I personally don't think it's the responsibility of women to define the role of how perpetrators are no longer perpetrators. I mean, asingeni indawo.
Okay.
Anyway, I mean, I can answer it. I can answer it at a theoretical
or
at a principle. But I think I'm just so frustrated. I'm even frustrated. Herbert, I love you, my brother, but and I'm an ally to you in terms of Black Lives Matter. But on this one, the way you interjected while Black women were speaking just really pissed me off, my brother. Like, I'm even teary, but it's fine. It's not personal, and it's not a personal attack on you. It just shows that we have been conditioned in society. Let me use white people, as a different way to try and demonstrate what the point that I'm trying to make. It's like when you're trying to unpack racism with white people, and the first thing white people say, but B is there, or what about when my Black boss gives me a warning on. White people don't want to talk about the power, the power dynamic, the privilege dynamic. And I felt like you demonstrated the same, but it's okay, my brother. I still love you. But I just think that it's not, Stan, it's really not our responsibility. We can answer the question as women. We know what needs to be done, but I feel like men need to take ownership, I do wanted to also just highlight briefly that when we talk about authorities, I think sometimes we not reduce the discussion, but we tend to only focus on like law enforcement. But authorities take up like the space everywhere. So if you think of institutions of higher learning where managements like just don't help students who have survived rape in residences on campus, or if you think about men who occupy, CEO positions and are aware of high numbers of cases of sexual harassment in the workplace, but know that their institution has no policy or no process and procedure, to assist the survival of that. We've just got to always think that authority doesn't only take the shape of, a police officer or a judge in a court of law. But just briefly, on the one of suffering in silence, I think in terms of the white community, we have to acknowledge that, you know, there's an element of racism and racist ideology in the discussion, rooted in the discussion. And I say that because, you know, there is this view that as white people, particularly white people who are staying in very affluent areas, and are of a upper class, that, you know, gender-based violence doesn't exist there. It's not a white thing, you know, it's not a white issue, but it really exists. You know, we know of you know, these top wealthy white businessmen who put out hits on their wives, you know. You know, we know of these high profile cases, but it's just very well hidden. And part of that reason why is because, you know, of institutional racism and interpersonal racism. And it's something that I think as white women who are seeking to be allies need to confront and be honest about, even in the question of gender-based violence. It's a side question, but it's part of the bigger discussion. But yeah, I just feel that in conclusion, you know, I just think perhaps one way, you know, that could assist is for us to have gender education right at a basic education level, to counter what is being taught in home or what is being seen in the community. But then again, we also don't have the best of basic education systems. So you've got to think of that as well, you know. But I really think if we can counter gender roles, gender constructs, gender double standards in the classroom at a young age, it might assist us down the road.
I like the way that you threw in the in conclusion there, so that you can go for another minute. Yeah, you know, it's a strategic. No,
Okay.
I'm kidding. Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Sabina.
To talk about, it's very interesting to me. Often when I talk to people about this issue, is that it's often quite expected that women need to learn behaviors to protect themselves. You have to dress a certain way, you have to be aware of what's happening. But it's always seen that the re-education of men is a long-term solution that won't help immediately. But why is it that the re-education of women is seen as a short-term solution? It's very interesting to me that there's this disparity. On the other hand, I do feel like changing these gender roles will take time. And I think we also owe it to the women of today to be able to create some immediate action now. What that means is accountability. How do we know that the situation is changing? In other words, we need to have more narratives about what happens to women when they go to authorities, whether it's management, whether it's law enforcement. What happens to them afterwards? Are they more safe, less safe? I mean, we are bombarded by statistics in the media, but we don't know what the conviction rate is. Is the conviction rate improving? What's standing in the way of conviction? Is it women having less access to court cases, women feeling afraid because authorities don't respond correctly? A whole combination of these. I mean, I think these are the questions that we need to grapple, and maybe media has a responsibility of showing this. I mean, we know that now there's a new draft for dealing with these issues in government and more money being spent. But how do we hold people accountable if we don't know these kinds of things already?
Yeah, and I think you brought in a very interesting point that ties into both, you know, media authorities and us as a people. Like the question of media at times sensationalizes the issue. So the headlines are great. So the headlines is when it's an issue of, at the moment, if you ask a lot of people, where did the Oscar Pistorius case end? Or where did the case of the lady who was murdered in the post office in Cape Town end? Where did it end? It would be so much interesting to actually realize that most people don't know. because the sensationalization is when it sells the headlines, is when these things happen. Then we take it also to a different, when you talk about authority in terms of our legislative arms. That if you look, let's say, I'll use a recent example of, say, like the Black Lives Matter. In the US, here in Canada, and a lot of countries, people started demonstrating. We had a pandemic. People just said, we will continue demonstrating. There is quite a few laws that have been changed already in the US. You know, companies have changed the way they act, and people continued demonstrating until that outcome was achieved. So this becomes also an issue that I think at some point we will need to engage in. It comes to that issue of, where do these things end? Do we give up too early? Do we decide to be passive because we also need to get on with our lives? You know, it's another conversation for another day. But I just thought I wanted to bring that up to say, from what you're saying, that's another very interesting perspective to it. To say, there was people when the president of South Africa stood up in the past week and spoke about what we're going to do. People were just supposed to say, last year we had the gender summit, whatever, in Daba. So people were just supposed to be saying, we don't want to hear about what you're going to do. Let's reflect. We had this summit. You promised certain things. I remember one of the ladies was open enough to show herself naked, only half naked with her pants on, to express, and the president was showing like he's about to cry. So the question is, since then, what did you do? You know,
And
but on this, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I mean, we see the crime statistics great, but I can't find any science. I'm a scientist, so I'm thinking statistics here on this. But, I can't find any statistics on conviction rates. Have they improved? Have they not improved? I mean, why do we not know about this?
Yes.
Why is this not being spoken about?
Yeah. And then on this issue of,
the statistics are not there. There's a reason why the statistics are not there. It's because they would be pathetic.
Well, exactly.
Well,
so before we come to you, Tiani, I just want to give Herbert an opportunity to speak specifically on this issue of the role of men. Like what, one of the person, Sam, said, Digena Bimna, we have a guy here. From your understanding, of course, as we continue this conversation, we engage more on it, but just in brief, your understanding of it. What's your role?
Well, so, Sam, I mean, it's okay. I mean, we have to disagree to agree at some point. Well, the point is that, I mean, if I feel like what Sam has also mentioned is, the idea is that in African society, men's muscular role is more collective. And it's not like in the Western world where achievement of whatever that you have is, be it academically, professionally, and what was somehow shows a level of manhood. It's a little bit different from an African perspective. I'm not saying that in the first world there is no gender-based violence, it's there, but it's a little bit reduced as compared to this. But I think also if we are going to teach young men, people like us, okay, it also has to do from how they grow up. How do they see their elders or their fathers, grandfathers, how were they treating, and how are they teaching them? What are they teaching their kids how to behave? Because I'm not so sure there was a kid who grew up, who was born to say, yes, I'm going to kill a woman, I'm going to do this. I mean, all these things were taught. It's a system that was instilled, just like racism. When we were born, you did not know color at all, but it was taught, instilled either by a system, either you're also a victim of what is happening. But when we start teaching, showing a different direction, trying to understand where it's low, when gender-based violence is very low, why is it low? Why is it ours is high? What's the difference? What's the dynamics? And actually try to implement this from a societal, from a male's perspective, changing the mindset more than actually the aggressive part. It can take more time, but changing the mindset might actually be better in that. In the long run, people will see differently. I walk to the beach in Italy. I don't think of anything. They don't think of anything. But what happens if I only don't have much exposure? How do I see about this? What do I think about this? There was almost always the same thing that happened, be like immigrants coming from different, as be it in Africa, from Middle East. When they come to this, when they are probable asylum seekers, there was an issue because they were violating women because they were not used to see women wearing this kind of thing, and they have to deal with it emotionally, trying to understand how do I do this. So it's a lot of exposure from a young age to see this is how you do things again.
Yeah. So Tabi, I see your hand has been up for some time. So we want to give our parting shots and concluding remarks. But you will start. Wait. You will start. So as part of that process, we want you to, after you give your input, go into how can we support one another as African youths, and your message to Africans and fellow Africans. As you know, Baobab Chats, we're connecting Africans across the world, and on the platforms you've got people mainly from Africa, different, but joining in from different parts of the world. So how can we support one another, and your general message as you give your parting shot. So we'll start with you, and then we'll go to you, Amanda, as well. I can see you've been wanting to jump in for some time. But yeah, let's do that. Then everyone else will come in.
Okay, so what I wanted to say is that I 100% agree with Herbert. I do believe that, when it comes to the elder generation, that they have been conditioned into learning certain ways and then trying to teach us. But then that's then how we, as people who know that it's not right, that's how we try to break down generational trauma, by taking accountability and unlearning things, and not just saying, well, my dad taught me that, so what can I? So like just being like, I know this is wrong. How am I going to fix it? Firstly for myself and people around me, and then for the future. And there's also the problem of access. That is, like, the way I'm speaking is from a place of privilege, and I acknowledge that privilege. And with that privilege, I hope to use it to instill knowledge to people who may not have this kind of access, resource to listen to these chats, but while taking accountability as well and saying that I'm not perfect, I make mistakes, not on any kind of pedestal. And yeah, I also think that it's very dangerous for us to be apologetic about people being violent on other people just because of their lack of understanding. That's very dangerous to do. But yeah, just apart. This is my last thing with regards to youth. I think that the youth isn't given enough credit for how much they work. If you look on social platforms, Twitter, Instagram, the other ones that I can't remember, Facebook, YouTube, they are the ones that talk about things. I learn more from whatever I see trending than I would in the classroom, because those are based on textbooks from 1980 something, written by a white man who thinks nothing about a black woman. So, sorry, one more. Advice to the youth is, well, I would firstly thank the youth, and I would hope that they're very proud of themselves. They have started something huge, big, revolutionary. And I would like them to carry on. Yeah, and maybe then the actual head honchos and people with power could learn from the youth, and maybe give funds so that the youth can actually work even more with the skill set that they already have,
That
which
they have
is
already developed. Yeah.
Right. I want to add on the question of what can men do. I think, the first thing is to acknowledge that you all aren't listening enough to women. You're not listening to victims. enough, even survivors, because it's already something that when women or when victims or survivors speak about it, they get a lot of, I mean, it's traumatic. You can imagine this is sensitive, right? And then already it's like somebody's like, well, I don't really get what you're talking about. Well, this is a thing that my parents struggled with. How am I supposed to help you? You know, like how like there's so much defensiveness around this topic that most survivors, and I'm not talking about victims or current victims, I'm talking about survivors. They can't even tell their story. They are not being heard enough. So what can men do? First of all, listen. And this is why I think that initially we wanted this to be a platform where women can talk, because we need to be heard. And then we do need a response, and it is about us collaborating as a human race, you know, to combat. We need to work together to fix it, but we also need to start at the point that what's actually the problem, you know? And I think if I'm going to say what actually is the problem, I would say mostly it's cultural influences. For example, men go to some initiation school things and they come back and they are 3 times more aggressive than you've ever seen. And you're like, why? And they get told, you get told, no, now they're a man. No, I'm a man now. So I can yell at you now. So I can hit you. I can shove you. You serve me now. You make food for me. I'm a man, you know? And it's like, this initiation school of yours, the Africans, it's to teach you to come back to treat us like this. That's the truth. Y'all don't want to talk about it. Lots of people don't want to talk about how initiation school is messing men up. And we're not trying to take it away, but what can you do? Okay, so where are most men going to learn to be a man? Initiation school. So that's where we need to start. We need to start there. Let's go there. We need to intervene in that curriculum. I don't care how sacred it is. We need to intervene in the curriculum of where we're teaching men actually how to treat. And you know what? It's a very vague question about how is it do we interact equitably between men and women? What is the best interaction between men and women? We don't know. We don't know. We don't know because we've never seen it.
Hello.
Okay, maybe white people and other more free or less gender-based violence-prone countries know, but most African countries, we don't know how to interact as men and women in an equitable way. Okay?
Yeah.
And then another thing is men have felt that since this new age where women are in power positions and leadership positions, and men don't know how to respond to that, right? Because we're saying we don't know how to respond to that. I think, yeah, first of all, we don't know, right? Sam said so, like, let's just start with the point of, as long as you are not violent, not violent, just start with,
And it's
don't
scary
be
that
violent.
that should be said.
Right?
Scary that should be said.
Let's start with, let's not be violent. Then we'll see how else do we treat each other. Because the main thing is that women get treated poorly in any context in countries where there's gender-based violence. Right? Well, I'm just speaking for South Africa. I actually cannot speak for other countries. I'm only speaking for South Africa. So what can the youth do? I think let's just start confronting each other more. We have conversations on social media. We have conversations, you know, okay, just mostly on social media because of social distancing now. But we should just call each other out. Like, I was speaking to another lady this week who told me, but here's a video of a young woman who has been beaten brutally by her boyfriend. And she is saying the words, I will never report him. She's saying the words, I love him, I will never leave him. And, you know, that's because she thinks that the right thing to do is to stay with him. She thinks that the affection that she has for him is enough to stay, to endure the pain.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah. So this
that's not right.
Yeah. Now we have to you know, as we continue with the conversation, you made some great points there. The intention is, this is the first one on this, setting the tone, and then we'll categorize it you know, differently for specific issues. But the next one definitely will touch on a different angle, and you know, we'll have one as well, maybe not necessarily a live, where men share their perspective as well, right? And we'll bring in one or two females to in there. Amanda, your parting shot and your response. Then we'll go to Sam. Then we'll end with you, Sabina, and then Herbert.
Okay. So
It's already started,
Herbert.
advocating for men.
Um,
But yes,
okay. So in terms of doing out, I think I agree with Tabi and Tiani 100%. Interestingly enough, when we did have this conversation a week back, we said everyone has their part, right? So as women, we're already going over and above because what we're being taught is to have more of a reactive approach. So a reactive approach being you're told how to dress, you're told who to hang out with, you're told what to say, what not to say, you're told don't be too friendly with a man, and then in being told don't be too friendly, now you're even scared to be too hostile because he might kill you for that. So it's literally a damned if you do, damned if you don't thing. And that's very reactive. So I think we have to adapt a more proactive approach. Proactive being every man, every woman has to say, in my household, it ends with me. So yes, in the past, this is how family issues were handled. For me, absolutely not. So I personally will have that sit down with my daughters and my sons. I won't just tell my daughters, hey, don't wear that. I will tell them to treat each human being with the exact same amount of respect, right? So not to say, okay, that's a man walking in the room, that's now a woman walking in the room. Treat people with the exact same respect. It starts
Yeah.
there, right? And then also this thing of because someone is a woman, I speak for myself. In certain households, if you're a woman, you are just told you deal with it. That's how men are. It needs to stop. Okay. So you need to say, in my household, I won't have those conversations of, oh, men do that all the time. As a woman, you need to be understanding. Everyone needs to be very accountable, right? So you need to say, okay, my accountability measure is if a man makes a joke that's inappropriate, I'm not going to laugh. I will ask him, what exactly do you mean by that joke, right? So if it makes me uncomfortable, my proactive approach is me saying, I'm not going to laugh at what she said. I'm going to make you explain what she said to me, and then I'm going to make you feel uncomfortable because you're not supposed to be making jokes like that about me. That's in the workplace, that's in households, everywhere. That's me being proactive, for example. And then when it comes to men, if your friend, Herbert, I'm not attacking you, says something like, oh, this girl's very drugged, so she's a good target. Your proactive approach must be you calling out your friend and saying, hey, you can't say things like that. You can't do things like that. It's wrong, right? So we have a tendency of saying, hey, it's not my business. I'm not going to say anything. Let's make it all our business collectively. So it's not a black woman thing. It's not a white woman thing. It's not a men thing. It's not a woman thing. It's a collective problem because it's mothers that are being killed, daughters that are being killed, people like it's a collective problem, period. So I think we have to be proactive and we need to take it very seriously. I actually don't know what needs to happen because so much has happened that you think men are furious, but men are kind of like, that's bad, but why was she
But
with such a horrible man? I would never kill my wife, you see? So let's make it an us problem. I think as African youth, let's start by being proactive and making it an us problem. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Amanda. Sam.
Yeah, I think just two things. Like one, I was listening to Rihanna when she was speaking somewhere, and she spoke about how we shouldn't allow the desensitivity to seep in, and it's hard. I don't think it's easy right now for women to, I mean, I feel like telling you, Stan, that all men must just go to Mars and leave all the women behind, and let black women own the land and leave the
Yes.
country, and y'all can come back in phases. That's where I'm at
Maybe we
right
should
now. But
maybe we should
I
organize
know
a
it's not.
one-way ticket for Herbert at least. Yeah.
hey, Keka.
Yeah, hey man. But I know it's not the solution. So I think maybe that's the first thing is that, just try not let the desensitivity seep in, but at the same time, don't be so hard on yourself, because I think this is very emotionally and mentally taxing. I don't think men know practically, so you might know of it like in terms of principle when we explain it to you as women, but I don't think men quite understand the practical like implications of on a daily basis. As Amanda said, you have to think twice before you step outside, because it's a daily thing. And I think that's also the problem with media, is that these are not incidents of GBV. I really hate that phrase, because it suggests that it's not an ongoing daily lived experience, which it actually is. It's really not an event. Uyinene wasn't just killed in the post office. Uyinene is one of many women and girl children who are raped, murdered, sexually assaulted, and harassed every single day in different spaces in South Africa. That's how it should be phrased. But I also just think, lastly, that just try and take up space and show up wherever you are. So, which in every field you are in, try and transform, or the radicals would say decolonize that space. So if you're in government, you need to be pushing legislation, and because legislation is very colonial, guys, it's outdated. It's part of the reason why the justice system doesn't work for us, because there are these old statutes that must be first interpreted before we can really delve into were you raped today or not. It's part of the problem. Or if you're in sport and there's lack of representation, push for it in sport, or whichever space you're in. As Zosi said, take it up and just try and decolonize, because that's the only way. It is, as everyone said, it's a societal issue, and it's in the home, it's in the church, it's in those traditional schools, it's everywhere. So you've just got to try and do what you can in your space. And as someone in the public sector, don't wait on government. I'm not politicizing the discussion. I don't care which party you support, if you vote or not. All I'm saying is don't wait on the state, on government, because we're going to have the same discussion here again in another 25 years' time if we plan to do that. Just use your own space. So, and thank you for the platform and for hearing everyone as well. Thank you.
Yeah, great, thanks, Sam. Sabina?
Yeah, I think I pretty much agree with what everyone has said. Yeah, I like the idea of proactiveness completely. I also think that we have to understand that it's also tiring for women to be constantly challenging and telling people why they shouldn't act that way. So I think in that way it's tiring, and I think this is where men can take some responsibility, educate, listen, understand that you have a prejudice, and that every day you need to think about your actions and reprogram yourself towards treating women the way that we should be treated. I think that's off the top of my head what I think men can do. Of course, we have a long road to go, and a lot of these won't happen overnight. But yeah, this is.
So, yeah, no, that's great. Herbert, I'll give you to give your parting shot. But when you finish, ladies, one of you who wants to give the last word, because I also don't want to find myself in the space whereby this guy is now the one who's concluding the discussion and we end with his view and understanding. So Herbert, you can give your parting shot and last comment, and then I'll wrap up and I'll give an opportunity to one of the ladies to conclude and close for us. And then when we do that, please don't log off yet, ladies. And you, Herbert, let's stay online when we end the live broadcast. Yes, Herbert?
Okay, so to be very honest, I have a mother and I have a sister. and I understand how you guys feel. And my approach to this in a different way is that as much as we are trying to correct the wrong, we should do it with a balanced view. The moment that we try to not to balance this from even from a male's perspective or from a female perspective, everybody should walk freely, irrespective of them being male or female, should act freely, just like is that particular time. Like someone is saying, we don't know how to communicate equally. Not that someone should be up there, someone should be like that. Be in legislative, be it in at work, at school, at whatever. It should be the mentality that there is, when it only becomes about the sex, it's only on other things, not necessarily in terms of education, in terms of work, in terms of what, and all these other things. It's entirely irrespective that I would really think that I'm with female or not. It's about how I think. Entirely for men, it's more about I'm just with another human being who is as equal as I am. As long as we push this mentality that whatever that we are going to do, we are on equal basis. And then when we actually have a change of mindset, be it from the authorities, with the point that you said I should throw in the bag, yes, I had thrown it in the bag. As long as we all know that even if I'm violated or abused, either I'm male or female, if I go there, I will get the response that I'm expecting as a human being, irrespective whatever that happens, or irrespective of your gender. This is the drive that I would want to see, and this is what I would push, irrespective of who you are, male, black, white, just have the same equal things. Let's dissolve this other structure in everything, knowing that we are equal. This is my last minute.
Okay. Thank you, Ebert. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and the guys that have been, joining the conversation and engaging from the comments section as we continue on this journey of trying to make the situation, like what Herbert says there, a human being is a human being. We shouldn't even be having this discussion. It should just be normal. It's the same discussion that we have about racism. It's the same that it should just be normal that the way a man would feel, the same way the female should feel. But thank you so much. We're going to continue with this conversation. This conversation is not ending here. We have plans to get people from different legislative arms in different African countries. We have plans to get gents to come and give their views. And like what one said, this should not be an event. This should not be in the next 3 weeks, this is what we are doing. This should be our day-to-day lives until this is over. We should not be that fire of paper, of newspaper that just goes up then down, but rather have a sustainable way of continuously singing this song. I can tell you one thing, having been facilitating the conversation, my buttons were praised so many times, and I had to act honorable in approach and still try and keep a straight face. But it's one of those realities of this is what we are dealing with. This is what our sisters are going through. This is what kids and children are going through. Someone commented there to say it can be about, LGBTI. It can be about, people in different. It's still gender based. It's still based on that premise that we are not coming from the same, gender classification. I think Tabi, you indicated that you want to conclude, and when then we close.
Oh, sorry. It was for Tia. Tia wants to conclude.
Oh,
not
Tia,
me.
yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I wanted to conclude to say this issue of gender-based violence is not going to be solved overnight. It's true. And that's what everyone says. They're saying that in a way almost to kind of defend themselves to continue behaving in a particular way, right? In a way that they feel like they can't change. Like, how am I supposed to change myself? This is how I've always been, right?
I just won't.
Or I just won't, right? So I think that it needs to go down to the education system from a young age. I think Sam brought this point up about teaching children already about how is it really that human beings should be treated. And I just wanted to give you guys an example of how we've tried that a little bit in South Africa, but it's deep. a couple of years ago, the education system tried to bring in teaching sex to primary school kids at a younger age, and parents they went crazy. They were so upset. They were like, "Don't teach my kid about sex. Don't teach my kid about sex." And what they're missing is that whilst we teach about sex and the safety of sexual practices, it's also a discussion about consent. And this is really the main thing. And if we're gonna have another discussion on this topic on Baobab Chat, we need to talk about things like consent. You know, children need to learn this. I think that people don't know how to respect even their own bodies.
Wow.
Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
People
I feel that Tiani, I feel and I'm scared that you're gonna open another can of worms that everyone would like to engage on, and unfortunately we're running out of time, but we need to speak about that and we need to continue that conversation. Thank you so much, everyone. And for those that were, on the comment section and engaging online on Facebook and YouTube, thank you. Please, keep following and watching out on the channel and on our page. We'll keep posting more about this as time goes. And thank you. And guys, don't log off yet. Great stuff.